First, I want to welcome everybody tonight. So we're doing a little candidate Q&A. I'm Tyler Gibbons, running for Knox County Mayor. Brandon Tucker is our guest host tonight. He's the former policy director of the ACLU of Tennessee and former state advocacy strategist at the ACLU. He continues to advocate for government accountability. I've had the pleasure of talking with Brandon on several occasions about some local transparency ordinances around the police department in Knoxville, and I've always found Brandon to be thoughtful and insightful. And I'm very glad to have his valuable time this evening. Thank you for coming, Brandon.
Tyler, thank you for having me. Just some quick housekeeping. My little girl is eating dinner right now, so if you all hear some cooing and some baby noises, that's what that is. But I really am happy to be doing this, Tyler. Some quick background. Tyler Gibbons is an engineer with 15 years of experience on infrastructure renovation projects focused on reducing energy use. I first met Tyler as a local activist in support of government transparency. He's currently running for Knox County Mayor as a Democrat on a platform of supporting renters, workers, and keeping government accountable. I'm happy to be here to keep the candidate accountable this time. And, you know, I'll just take a quick second of privilege here just to say that, you know, I've gotten to know you, Tyler, a little bit. I've enjoyed working with you, but I also think that you just really represent, you know, what's best about our system here. People who have really good insight on how government works, who have good ideas, but also you've taken those insights, matched them with courage, and put your hat in the ring. And so I just want to tip my hat to you because you do what so many of us say we would do if we had the time or the energy. And you're taking the time, you're finding the energy, and you're out on the campaign trail advocating for your community. So tell me, Tyler, how is this working today?
Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate your comments there. That really means a lot to me, especially coming from you, as I know how you are such an advocate as well. So, well, we have a collection of questions that we've either been asked while we're door knocking or that have been submitted by candidates. Basically, what'll happen is Brandon will read the questions, and you can ask some follow-ups or anything else if you want to. And for folks that are joined in, we've got a live chat going. You can type your question into the chat, and our volunteers over here in our technical department will take your message, take your question, and send it over to Brandon. He's got a little screen with the questions in front of him, and they'll feed your questions to him as they come up. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. So Brandon, will you hit me with that first question?
The first question is the best question and the most insightful. And I think I want to hear about, and the voters want to hear about, what's brought you to this race, what's brought you to this moment, and why are you running?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what really inspired me to run was getting involved with the activist community here, with reaching out to folks that were facing eviction during the pandemic. I worked with a local coalition that was identifying renters who could be protected under the moratorium, and we got them the information. And another thing I did was get involved with the homeless. Did a lot of outreach, especially to the folks that aren't sheltered in the local charity shelters here, you know, folks that are camping around. And what I saw by interacting with those people was folks who've just kind of fallen through the cracks in our social safety nets, you know, folks who lost a job or had a divorce or a medical issue, and they lost their housing or lost their income and spiraled into instability. And what I saw was that with the right resources and the right interventions, our county agencies could connect these folks to federal and state services, you know, and get funding and get things taken care of. But because our local agencies are understaffed and under-resourced, those people weren't getting the connections they needed. So people would, you know, do everything they needed to do to apply for utility assistance, and then the utility assistance would come a week after their power was already shut off. So I started looking into who can make a change to our social services and how we run things and how we prioritize them. And the county mayor is a good seat to do that. So the county mayor chooses the leaders, the board members of the various agencies that handle all our social services, The county mayor is the quarterback of the budget who kind of brings things together and decides what our priorities are going to be. Whether our priorities are going to be increasing, subsidies for development, or spending more money on our sheriff's department, or spending more money on our schools and social services. So the mayor is really in a key seat. And I think there's a great opportunity for a Democratic mayor to win this year, especially with the poor handling of the pandemic and the economic straits that Knox County is in right now. We've got a lot of folks facing a lot of problems here, and the leadership we have hasn't really addressed it. So I guess to me, the reason that I'm running for Knox County Mayor is because that is the position that can address the problems that I saw people experience in our systems.
I appreciate that, Tyler. Let's pivot for a second and talk kind of kitchen table issues, and specifically on small businesses. There were restrictions during COVID, and not everyone was able to take on those restrictions and have the same kind of success in business that they once enjoyed. So speaking of the small business person and COVID, how would you support our local businesses in this time almost post-pandemic?
Absolutely. Great question. So as far as the pandemic and the restrictions go, we know that large businesses got their PPP loans rather quickly and were able to get aid that way. And a lot of small businesses were left behind. My sister runs a small business, and she applied for a PPP loan, and it took forever for her to get her money. And I don't think it's been forgiven yet. And the whole thing's been a headache and a hassle and a lot of delays. I'm not entirely sure the county mayor can do a lot about those federal programs, but again, I think improving our social services, connecting people better to those programs is something that we can do better on, and that would have got us through the pandemic in a better way. Also, Knox County was hit very hard by the pandemic at a higher rates of cases and deaths than some surrounding and similar counties. And I think if we had better leadership, we would have had less severe illness, less severe loss of workers, less severe extended closure periods. If we're proactive in the way we tackle problems, I think that helps everyone. To kind of focus in on small business a little more, I think what we can do in this post-pandemic era is some of the things we should have been doing all along. We have kind of had an attitude of development in our county to try to attract in big developers who've done projects other places and bring them in to build things here. We really need to nurture the talent that we already have. Well, we have great local restaurateurs. We have a vibrant local community. That's a small business community, lots of little shops and everything. And the kind of programs that would support small business entrepreneurs are business incubators and even housing and workforce housing. All these issues are kind of tied together. So I guess the best way to help small businesses in the post-pandemic era is to the same way we would have before. To bring them into county services, to choose small business contractors. For a lot of county services we do over large business contractors. That's something we always could have done and haven't necessarily focused on. And to create the kind of spaces where small businesses can thrive, not just big suburbs, out in the country, but by densifying and creating the corner store that's been missing from America for so long, we can really start to fill in some of these neighborhoods and create business opportunities for local folks who are interested in going to business. I was talking to someone the other day from Alliance House who mentioned that we have a real food desert problem here in Knoxville. And I think that by creating retail spaces as part of our development program and creating business incubators for small businesses, and especially creating those spaces where they can set up shop, that's going to be critical to helping our local entrepreneurs get their foot in the door and start building their franchises, start building their own businesses.
So I have another question in from the audience, but before I get to it, I've known you for a little bit, and I think you've always been an advocate for the unhoused community or the homeless community. Can you just speak to where that drive comes from? Because our next question is related to homelessness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really not a complicated story for me. It's just simply seeing the conditions that my neighbors are living in, uh, and entering that community. As I started rubbing shoulders with activists through the eviction defense program, I started meeting people that were going to these homeless camps, and they started telling me about the needs these folks have. And a lot of what they needed was just a little bit of my time, right, to help them move things or to do simple stuff like bringing water. Bringing water down to the camps was one of the things that I did the most. And so I guess just by interacting with those folks and seeing that they are human beings, just like you and I, that have made mistakes, perhaps like I have made mistakes, but I had these social supports or the resources to carry through those things. So I guess it's just living in this America, land of prosperity, beautiful big houses and big boats and fancy cars, just right across the street from human beings, our neighbors who are suffering, and we can do better. So, having a little mute trouble there. That's all right.
And so that may be a recurring theme. I don't want to interrupt your responses too much, so be prepared to see me hitting mute after I ask my questions. And so let's talk when you're mayor question. How do you plan to pay for affordable housing and services for the unhoused and the homeless community?
That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you.
So absolutely. So there are going to be upfront costs, right? And that's something that will have to have some public funding behind it, right? But what we found, even here in Knox County, in Knoxville, is that when you implement permanent supportive housing, when you implement transitional housing, and you start bringing these chronically homeless people into an environment where they can take care of themselves, you get them off the street, you get them a place to sleep, a place to shower where they can take care of themselves, give them social workers to help them out. What we find is that is a lot less expensive than policing the homeless or bulldozing their camps. I think a program here in Knoxville had about 45 folks that they monitored over the course of a year, and they estimated $75,000 in savings in local services just following those 48 chronically homeless folks over the course of the year. And a lot of cities have seen big savings on the stress on their emergency services, on their police services, when homeless folks are put into modern, well-researched, well-tried, this kind of permanent supportive and transitional housing has been done in a lot of places very successfully, and we find that saves money. So it has some expenses up front, of course, but in the long run, a lot of the things I'm proposing pay for themselves. So where do we get those upfront expenses? I think if you look at our existing county budget, you will see that our priorities have been a bit skewed for a long time, but especially the past 4 years. So what I like to point to is our general fund, which is kind of the mayor's portion of the budget that doesn't include the schools, has grown about 10% in the past 4 years. But our budget for public health and social services has grown by 0%. We've had 200,000 people move into Knox County in the past several years, and we are not spending any more on our social services now than we were then. So the budget has grown, but we haven't put the budget where it's going to help the most people, where it's going to help the most Knox County citizens. So I think a big part of that upfront cost is just going to be reallocating what we're already spending, because we have the money there, we can prioritize it better.
I'm really happy to engage in this conversation, and I think these are the right questions that folks are proposing. I mean, you've clearly spent time learning the issues, and there's so much knee-jerk reaction or assumption that comes along with conversations on affordable housing, low-income housing, social service programs, and not giving more money to or not expanding police budgets. And it's it's a huge body of research that goes along with this. And so to hear you bringing it on the campaign trail is a real breath of fresh air. And so the next question that I think you'll have a really clear insight on deals with crime. And they're wondering if low-income housing or affordable housing contributes to high crime or comes along with an increase of crime.
Yeah, you definitely hear that a lot. And I've heard that concern a lot talking to folks. And that tends to be the concern that people bring up when public or low income housing is going into their neighborhood. But I was just talking to someone at the League of the Democratic Women's Voter Club last night, and she was telling me about a development in her neighborhood that happened a few years back. And of course that happened. You know, everybody complained, all the neighbors around there sending complaints. They didn't want this development to come in. And a few years down the road, everybody loves it. It's fine. The neighborhood's great. Crime hasn't gone up. And you see that happen over and over again. People are afraid that something is going to disrupt the idyllic character of their neighborhood. But what they really find is that our neighbors in low income housing are good neighbors. You know, they want to be responsible citizens just like you and I. You know, these are just regular people. They just, you know, are trying to find a place to live. So you know, all the research backs that up. Low-income housing projects increase the value of homes around them. Doesn't have a detrimental impact on home values. There's lots of studies that show that. It really is just that knee-jerk reaction, like you say, that people are afraid of something different. But again, when these projects go through, we find over and over again that we have good results and things go well. Crime doesn't go up, property values go up. I think a lot of times when people think of public housing or low income housing, they think of big, stark towers. You know, you think of like the old New York 80s developments, and people are turned off by the architecture and the atmosphere of those things. But public housing doesn't have to be that way. And we have plenty of developments here in Knoxville that show that. The Austin Homes development that's going in is a beautiful little neighborhood with mixed density, some dense buildings, some townhouses, some single family homes. So low income and public housing can be just as valuable an asset to a neighborhood as, you know, another street full of single family homes. And also to bring that up, if we're building our public housing in a mixed use kind of way and building those small business incubators I was talking about into them, that creates economic opportunity and creates that little corner store that everybody wishes they had in their neighborhood. You know, so I think there's a lot of synergy in a lot of these ideas, a lot of synergy in the idea of densifying and of thinking about our low income housing, our public housing, and our homeless population. How do we deal with that? We know the homeless population going here. It all comes together in pushing for more affordable housing. And it really does alleviate a lot of these issues.
And I appreciate that response, Sarah. I'm sure the voters do as well. And, you know, a lot of the topics that are covered in a mayoral election or local election are themes: housing and taxes and crime and police. And you know, I get that. And before I get to the next question that's been submitted to us, you know, one of the things I appreciate about conversations with you is, you know, I think there's a surface level of a conversation, you know, buzzwords, and you've always been able to detangle a pretty complex set of ideas and conversations, and really look at them in a policy lens and what, you know, has been proven to work and what government can contribute to. And so, you know, on this next theme is on crime rates. Look, I think that throughout the country, folks are having this conversation, and it's not unique in your neck of the woods. But how are you going to address an increase or potential increase in crime?
Yeah, so we've definitely heard a lot of folks talking about crime, and there's very much a perception of increased crime. And in Knox County, in the past year, we have had a higher rate of murder and violent crime, but particularly murders, especially in one area of town, and that's been well covered. And so I think that's got a lot of people afraid. But for the last statistical years that are published by the Knoxville Police Department, if you look at 2019 and 2022, I'm sorry, 2019 to 2020, crime did go down. Crime went down overall about 6%. So I think there's a lot of fear out there that's a little bit unnecessary or beyond what's actually happening. But violent crime is definitely a concern. But again, I would point to the solution to rising crime and even violent crime is poverty reduction, right? To get people in better housing, to get them more secure jobs, to connect them to social services, to reduce people who are in high stress situations. That helps reduce violent crime. Most of the murders that happen in the United States are two individuals who know each other, who get in an argument. And we know that a common cause of arguments, especially in domestic situations, is finances. So the pandemic has put us all in this pressure cooker where we couldn't work or we were laid off for work and the bills start piling up and rents are still going up. And when you have people, human beings in a situation like that, it's just it's a time bomb. It's ready to boil over. So the way to prevent violence is to intervene in poverty. Now, of course, that's not the only way. We do need detectives to investigate and try to solve crimes and things like that. But I think when we go too far down that path, when we focus too much on policing always comes after the crime. Policing doesn't stop crime. It can possibly catch offenders afterwards. Although if you look at our statistics, most of what our police and sheriff do is answer alarm calls and do traffic citations and things like that. They're very small portion of what our law enforcement does is anything related to violent crime. But that's what gets the splashy news and things like that. But again, I would just say that the best way to reduce crime is to reduce poverty and get people out of these situations where they don't feel like they have a way out. Another aspect of violent crime is black market trades, drug trades, and other things like that. And when that's left in the shadows, everybody likes to romanticize the mobster days of prohibition, but that was an extremely violent era, and we are in another era of prohibition now. So when you remove the ability to find legal remedies for their business disputes, they're gonna, search for another way to resolve their disputes, and often that comes to violence. So again, crime reduction is poverty reduction. Crime reduction is looking at a different way of policing, relying less on police and trying to intervene more early on and catch these situations before they erupt in violence. A little technical difficulty there. All right,
No. We're here. I appreciate how you frame that. I'm asking the questions as the voters and folks viewing are submitting them, and the policy side of me is like, I'll answer this question, but
no, you're in the other seat tonight, Brandon.
If there's anybody I trust to really cut to the heart of the matter and bring a more nuanced way of looking at complex issues, it's you, Tyler. And so I felt pretty good handing that off. But next is a critical issue as it pertains to municipalities, localities, and that's public transit. What's your position? Do you support funding public transit, expanding public transit in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think public transit is crucial to the infrastructure of our future. In the same way that the only way to fix homelessness is to give people homes, the only way to reduce traffic is to take cars off the road. So the only way to reduce cars on the road is walkable spaces and public transportation. So currently our city, Knoxville, has a pretty robust bus transportation system that is currently being restudied, and there could be things improved on it. But I've talked with a lot of riders who find the service very serviceable and reasonably priced. The county is not a partner in that. There are a few lines that run to the county. There was a bus line that ran out to Farragut for a while, but there's never been a countywide or a city-county partnership to really make sure that we're getting public transportation service where we need. And I would love to see the county join CAT, the Knoxville Area Transit System, and make it a true Knoxville area system that really includes the county. So I strongly support expansion of our public transportation network. Again, that's another way to bring federal dollars back into our county. There's a lot of federal money for public transportation. The city benefits from that. I think the county should benefit as well. CAT has also been electrifying their buses, which is great. I support that as well. Bus electrification has worked in lots of places. There's no reason we can't do it here. And by golly, the fuel savings, when gas is creeping up $4.10 a gallon, it makes sense to switch to electric where you can. So.
No, I appreciate that. I want to, before I get to the next question, which has already come in, let's spend a little bit more time for a second. You hit on a couple of things, like people are talking a lot about traffic. Well, if you want a reduction in traffic, then we got to get cars off the road. Can you just speak for another minute or so on what you're hearing from voters and why your position on public transit may be a good solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So Knox County is a very hilly and mountainous terrain. We cannot expand our roads indefinitely. We run into issues all the time with North Shore is a 2-lane road for a long way, and it's difficult to expand because of river on one side and land owned on the other, or gullies and ditches and things like that. So we're geographically restricted in how big our roads can be. And there's also diminishing returns when you expand roads. Now, if you talk to anybody in Knox County in the past couple of years, they'll probably tell you that traffic's gotten worse. And folks that have moved into subdivisions that are a little bit further out in the county and have been driving down 2-lane county roads to commute into the city will tell you it's really bad. So I think the way we alleviate that congestion problem, that is a real problem. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, with traffic and we complain about it, but that's people's time. That's time people could spend with their kids. It's time people could spend working. It's time people could spend relaxing someplace other than the car, listening to the radio. And that's very valuable for the mental health of our community. So to really fix the kind of transportation infrastructure problems that Knoxville has, public transportation has to be a part of it. And densification has to be a part of it. Those kind of medium density, mixed use, public housing, affordable housing developments that I like to talk about are another way that we can reduce the number of miles that a car has to travel. So the kind of development that we've had in the county for the past decade has been very sprawling. We had a 30-year plan that we came up with in the early 2000s that promoted densification and identified areas where we should be putting in more medium density and more small commercial. And we didn't really follow that plan. We just let the subdivision sprawl as far as they wanted. And so we lose those corner stores, and we lose that sense of community, and we get a ton more cars on the road. So even with more people working remote, that's not the majority of us, and more our bosses are trying to get us to come back in. So reliable transportation for everyone. Yeah, I like to say we need to promote buses and public transportation so that people who like to drive cars can continue to drive their cars and will enjoy driving their cars more. I like driving sometimes. I also don't mind taking a subway or a bus or a train sometimes too. That's also relaxing. But I don't think that we need to make people get rid of their vehicles and ride the bus. But when you create a bus system that is a better option, people are going to choose that. Not everybody wants to drive a car every day. I think, I could talk more about bus systems. There are lots of ways to make bus systems better. I would love to do the buses different here. I'd love to see some bus only lanes, bus priority lanes. Exactly. I'd love to shut a couple streets down and make them buses only, but these are all reach goals. These are all things I'd like to see us move towards in creating a more, a more friendly and vibrant, walkable urban atmosphere around our city, and preserve our country atmosphere in the county instead of having to sprawl out into it.
100%. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I knew you had some more to say on the topic. And also, I mean, look, if we can joke about it or we can, poke fun, but for a lot of folks, uh, especially in this time in the past few months, it may be an option between getting 3 gallons in the gas or uh, getting dinner.
Right.
This isn't the time where gas is $1.95 or whatever
That's right.
used
And
to
our
be.
buses are $2 for a day pass. That's a heck of a
Hmm.
bargain.
Understood, absolutely. So I appreciate you entertaining the tangent. Just
Good, thank you.
let's um let's jump up to the diversity of Knox County. How do you plan to represent um, a diverse community, and how do you plan to represent uh, many Knox County residents who don't look like you?
Absolutely. That's a great question. The short answer is I cannot represent everybody that doesn't look like me. I think the way you give people representation is you give them seats of power. So we have board positions that are currently occupied mostly by real estate folks and business people. I would like to see more people with lived experience in going through those systems, in experiencing trying to access those services. I would love for someone who has gone through an eviction to be on the board of CAC and understand what it's like to try to get rental assistance and not have the services there for you. I would love to see someone on the board of KCDC, our public housing group. I would love to see someone on that board who has been homeless. You know, currently we have one member of that board who lives in public housing. I think that it should be more than that. We definitely need business and development and lawyers on our boards. You need a variety of perspectives, but currently our community members, working class folks are very underrepresented. So I don't believe in making token gestures to diversity. I think that the way you support a diverse population is by literally empowering them, putting them in those positions, not just advisory positions, not just on a community board that recommends some policy changes that may or may not be implemented, but put them on the board. Give them a vote on the agendas that come before those boards every week. Let them vote on what the new developments of public housing are going to look like, or let them vote on what part of the budget should go to which agency in the social services. I think you have to give members of the community the power. You can't pretend to represent all these different ideas. You got to give the ideas a voice in the room.
Absolutely. Um, we already have the next question, but I'm gonna take a point of privilege here to try to throw you off balance a bit. Tyler, if you could take a minute and just if you have an example, tell me about someone you've met on the campaign trail uh, who's taught you something that you didn't already know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I ran into a person who had worked at the CAC before. She works at a different location now. But we had a long conversation about the culture there and how the folks there, had struggled to try to get things done, and leadership wasn't supportive and the resources wasn't there. I guess that wasn't exactly something I didn't know about, but
Mhm.
she did introduce me to a community organization, a Lions
Yeah.
House Community Coalition as well. And I had no idea of their existence before, and they've got all kinds of great programs. So,
Mhm.
and that's not the only time I've gone out to the community and met folks. I went to I heard about the Beck Cultural Exchange Center has this wonderful rights restoration program that they do on I think it's the first Tuesday of every month. I went down there and visited that place and just saw that there are so many folks in our community who are working on these issues.
Yeah.
Lots of folks in nonprofits, lots of folks in grassroots, ground level positions, and that connection that they need from the county to get additional funding, additional support to do things that private people can't do that governments can.
Mhm.
We've got a great homeless harm reduction group here that gives out tents and blankets and tarps. They can't build bathrooms. They
Mhm.
can't build shelter for these people. All they can do is a little bit. So um, I've just come into so many different folks who have touched so many different parts of our governmental system and have done their best to do the right thing. You know, all these folks that are trying to get their rights restored that I mentioned at the Beck Cultural Center, they're trying to get jobs. You know, they want to get their license reinstated. They want to be able to go back to work. You know, everywhere we go, you see signs that say nobody wants to work. Well, these people are begging to work. And because of the systemic roadblocks, they can't get back to work, to being productive members of society. So I feel like I've run into so many people that have these different theories about different parts of our safety net that we expect to function properly, and then it just doesn't work quite like it's supposed to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so many valuable lessons to be learned on the campaign trail, and so just want to drop that in there to get some insights about how things have been going for you. And that is one of the illuminating things, that wow, there's a whole bunch of people out here who are putting in the work,
That's right.
working within the system to make our community better, and it's inspiring. So I appreciate that. Getting back to the next submitted question. It's on Randy Boyd's baseball stadium. They say it was a poor use of public funds, but now that we're on the hook for it, what can you do as the mayor to make the most out of that stadium agreement, socially and economically, for the working class?
Yeah, I've spoken at length about my issues with the baseball stadium, so I won't try to retread too much on that. I do think it was a missed opportunity. Should have had a CBA, should have had union labor, but that's absolutely right. The baseball stadium has happened. So what can we do? Well, Randy Boyd and Boyd Sports made a lot of promises about what the baseball stadium is going to do for the community, what kind of access the community is going to have to the stadium, what kind of programs we'll be able to put on there. Let's hold them to it. You know, the bully pulpit of the mayor's office is very useful for that, you know, since this is a publicly funded stadium and it's going to be built and owned, at least technically publicly, although Mr. Boyd's going to control a lot of the access and everything there, that will give us more access to the facility as government employees and stuff. We should be able to go in there and inspect. You know, we should be able to have our code enforcement officers be in there more often and stuff like that. So we're going to have an opportunity to keep a really close eye on this project, on the people that are employed there, and on the various things that they promised to us. And I think the way to get the most out of this project is to just keep hammering those promises, make sure that this whole time the stadium's being built, the whole time we're pouring this public money into it, we are demanding, and I will demand from the mayor's office that Mr. Boyd keep his promises. You know, I wish we had something in the contract that had a little more teeth to it. That's something I definitely want to pursue in our pilot TIF, our various tax break programs going forward. We can write those contracts so that if tangible community benefits don't appear or rates aren't what they say they were, that sort of thing, not paying people whether you're supposed to, we can claw back our benefits, and they're not currently set up that way. So, you know, I wish there was more we could do to be a strong force to make sure that the baseball stadium does what it's supposed to do, but what we really have to do is as a public and as a government, and I as mayor will pay especially close attention to that project, because that's a huge investment for our community. And we really need to put the pressure on to get local vendors in there for the food, to make sure that local folks are paid right when they're working in the stadium, to make sure that nobody's taken advantage of, because the whole idea was this was going to be a benefit for the community. So we've got to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. The next question that's been submitted is probably one of my favorite questions, and it cuts straight to the chase, and it's why should we vote for you over the other Democrats in the race?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It does cut to the chase. So I mentioned earlier that we have a pretty historic opportunity for a Democrat to win this mayoral election and the general election. I really believe that. More people voted for Joe Biden in the last presidential election than voted for this mayor the last time around. Obviously, that's different election cycles. More people came out to vote. But there are people here, enough folks here, that we can win. And there's a lot of people that haven't voted. And reaching and activating those people will be a big boost to getting us over the top to winning this election. So I've crafted my policies, and they're crafted based on what I honestly believe, but the things I put in the forefront, you know, stabilizing rent, building more affordable housing, financing and supporting our social services. I think these are things that will resonate with people that have been disconnected from the voting system for a long time. Folks that have thought there's nobody worthwhile to vote for, or my vote doesn't count, or things like that. I think if we have a platform and a promise of delivering real good things for the people of Knox County, we have a real chance to activate those voters. And that's what I'm coming out the gate with. I'm coming out with our government needs to do more for its people. And I'm coming out with that strong. The other candidates in the race have their issues that they're supporting, or they want to support affordable housing or support responsible development. I really think that we've got to go hard on these issues and use the full power of the mayor's office to accomplish things, not just to advocate, not just to suggest or encourage our developers, but to really use as much power as we have got there. And I think I have the understanding of the position and the understanding of our programs. I have professional experience in negotiating with federal and state actors. So I really think that I'm a person who's well suited to this role, to really taking charge of that budget and quarterbacking it and making sure that all the agencies are getting what they need and coming together. I'm experienced in that kind of negotiation. And, I've been out on the campaign hard. I've been out knocking doors. We've knocked probably 500, 600 doors so far, and we've got even more on our list. I've been really trying to reach out there to the people where they are, go into those apartment complexes where people have been facing rent increases, and getting out to we've had a bunch of events at local bars and restaurants, and got out there and got out there with people who didn't even know an election was going on, and made connections and stuff like that. So we've been running an active and energetic campaign. I'm ready to carry that energy forward, and I think we've got the policies that can really activate people in Knox County who haven't been paying attention before. So that's why I think I'm the right candidate.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we do have another question coming in. Let me throw you another kind of rapid fire. I know we're winding down on time. But there are some who are viewing tonight who are already supporting your candidacy. And there are some who are trying to make up their minds. What would you ask of, one, your supporter? And two, what would you ask of the undecided voter in Knox County?
Absolutely. Well, if you're a supporter and you're ready to vote for me, I would say, please, please, please tell your friends and be loud about it. The only way that we get people out to vote is by letting people know there's an election going on. And a word from you as a friend can mean a lot more than a mailer or a flyer or a text message from a robo-text or anything like that. So if we don't create our own networks, if we don't connect with our own communities and engage with people in the political process, which I know some people are uncomfortable with. We don't like to talk politics. We don't like to start fights. But local politics is the bread and butter of our daily lives. The homeless population we have, if local government had been responsible and followed its plans, we wouldn't have that tent city under the bridge that we have now. If government had been responsible and done what it's supposed to do with modern accountability for our sheriff's department, maybe we could have prevented some of the deaths in custody that have happened in the past few years. There's just all kinds of things that could have been prevented or could be better now if you'll engage with the political process. So few people vote in local elections. A few friends you bring in can really make a difference. To someone who doesn't support me, I would say, go to my website and watch the debate with all three candidates. I think it's a great representation of all three of us and what we stand for. I think the two other candidates are great people. I think they want good things for Knox County. I think I'm ready to push harder than they are.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think we got a couple more if we have time. Again, going back to the budget, a large portion goes of the county budget goes to schools, but our teachers are still not receiving the compensation they deserve. How can we better support our teachers' salaries?
Absolutely. A big part of that is reprioritizing our expenditures. I talked about we've had a lot of growth in our budget in some areas and not in others. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've mentioned it in other talks that the sheriff's department budget grew by about 13%, while our public health budget was growing by 0. And that was not all deputy pay. Our deputies are apparently still underpaid a little bit compared to the surrounding counties. So we spent a lot of money on technology and a lot of money on heavy equipment and maintenance of heavy equipment, because the federal government gave away a lot of equipment for free to local municipalities. But the reason they did that is because now the maintenance budget is on us.
Mhm.
So we've taken on a lot of these unnecessary expenses in our policing strategy that doesn't prevent crime, as we discussed earlier. So I think if we reprioritize that money, that's going to help our teachers. That's the first step. Get the money that we're spending that's not functional into the budget for our teachers. Taxes are a big conversation that has been going around in Knox County. The new tax assessment just came out, so everybody's learning how taxes work again. Because the way it works here is if the assessments go up, then the tax rate actually has to come down automatically unless the county commission passes a tax increase. So I think paying our teachers more is about looking at our priorities, where we're spending the money already, refocusing, and looking at our school budgets too. I was just looking at our ESSER funds and the way we're spending that funds, and a lot of it was being spent on technology and services. And I would have liked to see more of it be spent on labor, on people, on bringing more local people in as support staff, or bringing more local people in as tutors, creating more jobs locally that way. You see, again, with our sheriff's department, same way, spend a lot of money on technology and not as much money on people. And I think both our overall budget and our school budget can be focused more on getting our teachers well paid. Because, if you look at all of the interventions you can do in school, all the extra tutoring programs and all these after school programs and how they affect grades, those things do provide enrichment for students, do make classrooms better, do promote student achievement. But the number one thing is good, well-paid teachers and right-sized classrooms. That's head and shoulders more important than anything else. So I think we have to look at our priorities as a county, and we have to think about our budget, and we have to think about if we're willing to pay a little more to make sure that our students are getting the best education they can get. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Look, let's look ahead a little bit. And say you get out of this primary, do you have the goods to win a general election? Can you convince conservatives to vote for you?
I think a lot of the issues I address affect working class people across the political spectrum. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat on national issues or cultural issues or anything like that, you still need a social safety net. You still need public services. You still need well-paid teachers in your schools. And teacher pay has been something a lot of folks have been talking about on both sides. So I think there's a lot of issues where we can reach across the aisle and make that connection, to more conservative-minded folks. And again, the issues in local government are not always related to those big tentpole national issues. So there's a lot of folks a lot of ways we can reach out there. But yeah, by focusing on the working class, I really do think that helps a lot. And the message to conservative voters is that we are not getting what we've paid for, right? We're paying these taxes. We're supposed to expect crime reduction from our sheriff's department. That's not happening. We were supposed to have this social services agency that got our federal money back to us. That hasn't happened. Your tax dollars, your federal tax dollars are being shifted to other states if they're not coming back here, because our social services are underfunded and not getting that money back for us. It is a challenge. I've run into conservative folks, and trying to convince them that the homeless population deserves to be housed can be difficult. Folks complain about trash and things like that, and it's hard to get them to understand. But I really do think that the key issues for the county our transportation issues, our social safety net issues, our policing issues. That I think that really affects everybody.
Absolutely. We'll go, pick up the pace a little bit. We have a bit of a broader question here. And so what's your position on metro government?
Yeah, and I think I saw somebody post a question earlier about the city and the county government interacting. So I'm going to kind of lump those together and answer those together. So the city and the county have a lot of agencies that already work together. I've mentioned several: CAC, KCDC. Those are partnerships. The sports authority that runs the baseball stadium is partnerships. I plan to continue those kind of city-county partnerships. That's the only way for those services to work. I think my priorities as a county mayor might be more aligned with the current city government's priorities. They have put affordable housing forward and have supported some programs. Of course, I want them to do more, right? I always think it's not enough, but they have moved in that direction. They've shown a willingness to move in that direction in the way that to date, county leadership really hasn't done. So, I have my qualms with the way the city has handled things, but I definitely think we're much more ideologically aligned between myself and the current city government than the current county leadership. As far as metro government goes, I've heard that brought up several times, and we do have all these agencies that are city-county partnerships. So we've got kind of like quasi-metro things going on there, but our police forces are still separate. I think the sheriff and the police being separate has been a big issue for a lot of folks. It's allowed the sheriff's department and the police department to kind of hide behind each other when there's controversies going on. They tend to point the finger at each other and who's to blame for this, who's to blame for that. That is an issue that could be resolved by metro government. But just the character of the city and the county as a whole, and what it means to become a metro government and what that does to the political reality of your city and the county. I think that's something we need to take, slow steps, very considerate and deliberate steps toward. I reference Davidson County a good bit, Nashville a good bit when I'm talking about police accountability, sheriff's accountability, because they have a metro police force that has a independent community oversight board, and they have an always on body camera policy. And I refer to them a lot. So, I think, metro is a possibility, but I guess also when I think about representation for our city and I think about what metro would mean, condensing some of these offices, I don't think we need fewer representatives in our government. I think we need more, so if anything, if we went to a metro system, I would want to see the number of commission and councilor seats, expand and break those districts down smaller. When the quantity of districts was first chosen here, population was much smaller. Representatives are now representing a larger quantity of citizens. So metro is a very complicated and tangled topic that a lot of folks are talking about, and I wish I had a roadmap to make us metro or a reason for us not to, but I think that's something that's just like still being how would we go about that? What would that look like? There's still a lot of questions there. But I would definitely like to see the city and the county participate more together in our social programs, and especially expanding public transportation.
Gotcha. We're running up on time, but we do have an important question, maybe a little bit in the weeds. It feels like it's just you and me here talking, Tyler. We could probably talk some of these issues all day.
Oh yeah, I can talk to you for another hour, Brandon. We won't make anybody sit around for that though.
No, I mean the weight of some of the topics that are coming in is like, you all really want to go there? But no, look, we got a thoughtful question. It says they're asking for your thoughts on Knox County Sheriff's Office continuing to participate in a 287G program.
Yes.
And you may have to educate us on what 287G is, but if you want to take this on, I think we'll probably have to close up after this.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll go ahead and let this be our last question. So before I answer the question, thanks to everybody who came in and participated. Really appreciate those questions in the chat. Thank you guys for coming in and doing that. So 287G is a program by which local law enforcement can partner with federal immigration services to detain and deport people suspected of immigration violations. So there has been, I think it's currently pending, or there's a lawsuit circling around our program right now that says it was possibly illegal to begin with because it wasn't approved by the proper channels, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a bad program. It's a way to criminalize folks who have committed minor or no offenses. When you hear the sheriff's department talk about it, they say it's for the worst of the worst and we're deporting bad criminals. But when you go look at the folks that have actually been detained or deported through the program, it's a lot of low-level, nonviolent crimes. And the reason we're in this program is because the sheriff and the jail get money from it. It's not a program that makes our county safer. It's not a program that is fair or humane. It's not something we should be involved in. And I think, unfortunately, both the Republican sheriff's candidates who are running are supporters of the program and think the program should continue. I don't think it should. So, that may be some tension between my administration and the sheriff's office, and it certainly won't be the only point. We're going to have a lot to negotiate around, but it's not the business of local law enforcement to be the immigration police. And frankly, the history of immigration and enforcement in the United States is fraught with all kinds of abuse. And the 287G program is another example of that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that is a message that should resonate across the aisle is that it's not the business of local resources and tools to do the work of the federal government.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our jail is already overcrowded. We don't have the space for those detainees. So.
And Tyler, I'll just say kind of what I opened up with. We came together to talk policy, talk shop on transparency and accountability and open government. And to see you translate your knowledge and your passions, and again matching that with the courage to put your hat in the ring and to put yourself out there to run for public office is admirable. Your message is strong. Your grasp and your knowledge on the issues it needs to be heard far and wide. And so, I'm happy to be here. I support your candidacy, and just want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this tonight, and give the last word to you.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon, and I can't thank you enough for being here, man. You have been well beyond my expectations. I knew you were going to be great, and man, I've just enjoyed this conversation so much. So thank you so much for that. Again, thank you to the folks in chat who popped a couple questions up for us. I really appreciate that. Lots of good questions tonight and good, tough questions. That's how I wanted this to be. I wanted to be put on the spot and have to be transparent. And I want my administration to be that way all the way through. So thank you again, Brandon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.